Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing? It's okay, you can talk to me. I'm just a person. Glad you guys are here, and glad you guys were able to make it all the way to the MGM. Were you guys already over here? Did you have to make it over just for this? Were you here already? Raise your hand if you're already here. Okay, cool. So not too many people had to make the trek just for this session, but glad you're here. Thanks for coming. My name is Ben, and I work in the AWS Marketplace team. And how many of you guys are familiar with the AWS Marketplace? And how many of you guys are actually buying software today out of the Marketplace? Okay, a few of you, okay. Marketplace is a great place to buy third-party software. We really work with a lot of the software vendors to help them to make sure that the software is easy for you to use in the cloud and also to procure in a cloudy way. So the way you're buying services in AWS, you're buying based upon your usage, and you want to be able to innovate quickly and not have to wait for the procurement process of a piece of software before you start using it. So the goal is to make the software available immediately to you. And so we spend a lot of time with all the vendors around the world in pretty much every category of software to help them through the process of making their software available in a cloudy way. So that's really what Marketplace does. And everything that we do is to make it easy for you as a buyer to be able to purchase as well as to implement, deploy. We're working on improving things around finding software to make it easier for you as well. And one of the reasons that we're here to talk to you today about DevSecOps is really because most of you are bringing projects to AWS, or you're building new applications or moving workloads, or maybe even some of you shutting down data centers. And when you come to us and you say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and all we have is a list of building blocks, we want to try to connect the dots with what you're doing versus what we have. So we're focusing on use cases around DevSecOps to be able to fill out the catalog to make sure we have the right products there, so that when you come and say, hey, I'm doing this one thing, and we want to be able to say, well, that's great. Hey, let me tell you all the phases. Let me tell you all the native services that you can use. Let me tell you all the third-party services that support each phase. So please give us feedback. If there's something in the Marketplace that you don't see that you would like to see, please let us know. We're glad to go after those vendors and encourage them even more so to get their products in the Marketplace. So we're going to be introducing a couple of folks in just a few minutes. Matt Gerdery is on my team, and he's responsible for DevSecOps globally with Marketplace. He came from Puppet, and he was a security guy there, so he's got lots of experience in really helping us to drive strategy around getting the right product listings. And then in a few minutes, we're going to talk to Martin. Martin comes to us from Broadridge Financial. He's got some super interesting stories to tell, and hopefully they'll connect to you, and you guys can see some of the experiences that he's walked through and some of the tools that he's using and the architecture, so that he can explain some of the things that he's learned, some of the things that he's doing. So really, he's the act that you're here to listen to. I'm just the intro. So what is this session? It is an intro to AWS Marketplace. We're going to describe our view on DevSecOps and showcase our customer Broadridge. What it is not is a deep dive on Marketplace. There's actually another session that happened earlier today with Chris Gruz, my boss, and our head of product management, Brad Lyman. They just spoke just this afternoon on how to sell in Marketplace if you're a seller. And then on yesterday, they did a session on how to buy in Marketplace. So if you didn't take those sessions in, you want to learn a little bit more, feel free to download. They'll be on YouTube. But we're not going to dive deep on that today. We're going to talk about different ways to perfecting security in DevOps, as well as a focus on the AWS security services and AWS native services in DevOps in the space, as well as some third-party services that are available in Marketplace. So for those of you who are not familiar with Marketplace, just real briefly, the goal, again, is to make software available quickly for you to find, purchase, implement, both software that's AMI-based, software that's pay-as-you-go, prepaid, or you want to bring your own license from something that you've used before. Pretty much everything that you can think of, we want to be able to provide a way for you to do that easily to leverage the third-party software. We work with all the vendors to make sure that their software is well-architected. We encourage them to go through the Amazon Partner Network competency program to make sure that everything's working properly and that it's actually leveraging the right native AWS services and APIs. We spend a lot of time curating that solution so that it works well. There's a lot of different categories of software. As most would expect, security is definitely the most common concern coming to the cloud, and it's the most popular category in Marketplace as well. with over 700 individual product listings from a lot of vendors there. We really work to provide capabilities so that when customers are buying software, there's free trials, there's different pricing models, hourly, annual, as well as pay-as-you-go, pay by usage, pay by number of protected systems, pay by data, by bandwidth. All these different capabilities are in APIs that we offer to the sellers so they can make it easier for you. There's a lot of different deployment options. We started with Amazon Machine Images or virtual appliances. Now we have a lot of SaaS solutions available in Marketplace. There's also APIs available and CloudFormation templates as well. But we also introduced yesterday the ability for customers and vendors to supply software in the way of a container in Marketplace. So if you don't want to implement an AMI, but you'd rather buy software in a container and run it in a container, you can do that now. And there's a catalog of over 35 container-based products already that were launched with us yesterday. So that's a new one. We have over actually 1,400 ISVs. There's been some changes just since this slide was printed. Over 4,200 product listings. We have 200,000 active customers buying out of Marketplace on a monthly basis. And quite a large amount of growth there. 650 million hours of EC2 deployed out of Marketplace monthly. When we measured that the first time, it was August of 2015. And in a 4-week period, we had only 87 million hours of EC2 deployed out of Marketplace. So there's a continual growth and a lot of adoption of Marketplace product as the vendors continue to improve their product to make them easier for you guys to use. Obviously, the growth of the public cloud and the amount of cloud workloads that are continuing to be added to the cloud, this further drives the need for third-party software. And so, again, all of our goal is to provide all the right selection and help the vendors that are building SaaS solutions. There's a number of new ones that are actually being announced this week, and continual improvements on those solutions that are there. There's a lot of solutions that are available that in Marketplace we focus typically on the 50 most common vendors that most customers use, and then we have a long tail of over 500 vendors, 500 plus vendors that are coming up and becoming more popular. There's also the Microsoft and Oracle and SAP and VMware and IBM vendors, and we do spend time with a lot of those vendors as well, so you'll be seeing additional solutions coming from the larger vendors as well. We've mentioned that there's a lot of different categories of software. These are some of the most popular categories. And I would highlight here to check out the competency program on the Amazon Partner Network. And each one of these categories, there's a competency where we've spent time to curate even more the solutions to make sure that they're designed well for you and easy to use. So take a look at the Partner Network. And then these are ways that we can promote the solutions that are designed well for the cloud. Out of the security category, 700 listings in Marketplace, only 30 of them are through the competency. So we've tried to highlight a few to make it easier for you if you're just starting and you don't know what to use. So again, just as a recap, why do people like to use the Marketplace? Sellers like to be able to sell software to make it easier for buyers. If you're trying to grow a customer base and you want to be able to use the powerful tools that are built for the cloud, you don't have to go out and figure out which vendors are doing it. You can just come to us and we'll tell you. And we want to improve efficiency and profitability for you as a customer. So we want to be able to make software available to you you're only having to pay for what you're using, just like all the AWS native services. So now I want to introduce Matt Girdari, and he's going to talk about the shared responsibility model. He's going to talk about DevSecOps and where we're going with that. So Matt?
Thanks, Ben. And welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I think, how many people are familiar with the shared responsibility model? Good. If you're an Amazon Web Services user, you should be. The top part of this, I'm not going to go into deconstructing this whole thing, but the top part of this is what you should be paying attention to, right? The stuff that you put into AWS infrastructure is what you're responsible for securing. And so a lot of what Ben was just talking about, the Marketplace efforts that we go through, especially from a networking and security perspective, is to help provide various tools for you to achieve security within that top layer. I'm going to be going through some of the DevSecOps tools and platforms that we use. And then really, my job, I'm not with Broadridge, but my job today is really just to set some context for Martin, who's going to take you through in a very, very practical, concrete way how Broadridge Financials kind of does DevSecOps, how they look at regulatory compliance, continuous compliance, and overall reducing risk in their IT environment. So before we actually get into DevSecOps and setting the context, people may not be familiar with the term DevOps. So without DevOps, you don't get DevSecOps. So just as a very, very brief primer on what it is, basically there are essentially three ways of developing and delivering software, right? So the top one is waterfall. This is kind of the traditional old school method of delivering software, where you're designing, you're coding, you're testing, you're deploying. If you notice though, the big piece of this, the elongated piece, is the coding part. And so this is where companies historically have tried to put lots and lots and lots of features into major releases, right? And they're releasing on a yearly basis, bi-yearly basis, right? So it's very slow. It's got lots and lots of lines of code, lots of potential bugs, and there's not a lot of automated testing or automation in general that's happening there. And so this is what I would call the slow dinosaur method, right? Then you have Agile, which is something that developers love, right? So here's where you're actually increasing the pace of delivery by actually reducing the size and the amounts of code and features that you're delivering. You're introducing things like automated testing so that you can fix bugs as they arrive in the coding process, and then you're deploying much, much faster. The problem is that the operations team and the sysadmins, they're still not prepared to take this code in, right? So that's where we get to DevOps, and that's where you get really a collaborative effort between the development teams and the operations teams. You have things like infrastructure as code from the operations side, so that everything is treated as code, just like your application code. You're doing the testing of all of that code together from a security perspective, from a feature perspective. And then when it comes time to deliver that application code into your production environment, things are copacetic. They're going to work. You've tested it. You know it's going to work. You can deliver much, much faster. So basically the algorithm for DevOps, if you will, it's automation times development plus infrastructure, and that's all code. Automation is kind of the key piece that we're going to focus on today, because all of DevOps, all of DevSecOps really relies on this concept of automation. So it's really getting all of the manual stuff out of the way, letting computers, letting software do things that human beings really shouldn't be doing, or they don't want to do, right? Or you don't want them doing. And the thinking here is that, theoretically at least, and I'm the theoretician, this guy's the practical guy that's going to give you the real truth on this, but as you're moving from your on-prem environments into the cloud, you can also think of how much coverage space you're getting along your containerized applications, your cloud applications, and so on and so forth, and how much automation you can actually fit in there. This was a little fun tidbit, by the way. So where is automation going, right? So I read this story about a month ago where there are actually bots that have been developed that will look at code in your development environment, and they will detect vulnerabilities, and they will actually automatically write patches for those vulnerabilities. And so they ran experiments on this where they had bots actually communicating with the developer saying, hey, I found a vulnerability and I wrote a patch for it. Do you think this thing is acceptable? And I think it was five times for this particular application. The bot's sort of automated remediation was accepted by the developer, unbeknownst to the developer that that was a bot. So automation is kind of a cool thing. Looking at this from kind of introducing the security and compliance piece onto this. So DevOps is kind of, as I mentioned, a little bit about speed and stability. Speed on the development side, stability from the operations teams. So you can be on the one side, and this is from a DevOps perspective, you can have speed of delivery, right? So if you kind of look at that left-hand rectangle, if you will, you can be very, very fast, but your code's not going to be very stable, right? In an instance where you're not doing proper DevOps. On the other hand, you could be very, very stable, but not very, very fast, right? And that's where operations teams are saying, look, we need this code to look like this, and they're going to throw it back at the development teams and say, until it looks like this, we can't put it into production. So you're sacrificing speed there. So DevOps, what you basically are doing is you're developing processes and collaborative efforts over time to actually increase the surface area that you're covering and move more to the upper right here to say, look, we're going to be fast and we're going to be stable. Same thing for security and compliance. So I'm not going to get into, I have a whole talk on why security is not compliance. I'm not going to do that today. But suffice it to say, you can be compliant but not secure. You can be secure but not compliant. okay? Martin's going to get into a little bit of that. But it's the same thing for security and compliance. You want to actually be both secure and compliant and not one or the other. And so with the platforms and the tools that we're talking about today and the processes that we're talking about today, we're looking to kind of, again, move into the upper right quadrant here. So the nirvana state, right, is when you have well-functioning DevOps, which is the y-axis here, you have speed and stability, and then on the x-axis here, you have security and compliance. And again, you're working with the development teams and the operations teams are working with the security teams and the auditing teams and the compliance teams, and they're moving upwards and upwards and upwards through better and better processes. And this is what you get when you do that. This is a picture by my daughter, by the way. I promised her I would insert it into the presentation, and so here it is. So the new kind of equation that we get here is, again, speed and stability is DevOps. You need to have security and compliance as the underlying foundation for that. And then once you have that, you get DevSecOps. So when you have this, and this is sort of the Gartner Magic Quadrant view of the world, right? If you have more automated compliance and security, you have better performing DevOps, you get into that upper right-hand quadrant where you have software that's quickly iterated, and you don't have security as being an inhibitor to the speed of the delivery. So the fundamentals, kind of looking back through all of those slides, you need to identify what you need to be secure and compliant, right? You need to set your rules for security and compliance, and then you need to auto-remediate where you can against deviations, right? And that's really the security piece to it. So I've talked kind of about automation as this, magical unicorn, if you will. But in the real world, and especially in Martin's world, not everything can be automated, not everything can be automatically remediated. And so that's important, and I'll take you through a little bit of a whiteboard exercise here. When I talked about kind of the waterfall process and kind of this manual process, you have a kind of a graph that looks like this, right? So you have a very, very long development process that doesn't have a lot of automation in it. So that's all of your code being delivered at, right around T6 times 6 here, right? And then that check mark is, hey, we're going to do a security check on this thing. And security guys are saying, look, you got 3 options. You can deliver this stuff quickly, which is case A, but it's still going to be riddled with security bugs. You can deliver in time B, or line B, if you will, where you're remediating some of those security flaws, but not all of them. So you don't have a perfect security posture, but you're getting that code out a little later than you would than case A. And then you have C, again, where it is, all right, we're going to fix as many bugs as we can, but we're going to suffer in terms of time to market, right? Then you have what I call kind of the born in the cloud case, right? So this is case D, where you have a lot of automated testing, both from a feature perspective and from a security perspective, and you're pushing stuff out faster and faster that's really secure. So you can think of the Netflix of the world that engage in this type of model, the Amazon.coms of the world that engage in this type of model. But that's sort of, not always the case of what companies can do. And so there's this sort of middle case that F is not for fail, by the way. But it's a middle case where there's a mixture of automated best practices as well as manual checks. So there is a real reason for human beings to get involved in this. And Martin's going to go through a little bit of, that sometimes we don't automatically remediate. We take that information and we do other things with it that human beings have to touch. So security of the CI/CD pipeline. So when we're talking about DevOps, this all comes down to a CI/CD pipeline. I'm not going to get into an entire talk about CI/CD and all that stuff, but suffice it to say that as you're pushing your code through a CI/CD pipeline, we think of it in 2 ways. You need to have security of your CI/CD pipeline. So that's things like IAM, Identity Access Management, making sure that the right people have the right access at the right times to that particular code as it's going through your process. You have things like web application firewalls that are doing their thing in order to protect your applications while they're running. And then you have a whole set of tools, logging and monitoring. You have ITSM. You have communications platforms like PagerDuty that all get into the mix as well, right? And those are all things to sort of provide a cocoon around the CI/CD pipeline, if you will. What we also focus on, though, is security within the code itself, right? So embedding security into the code. And this is just a simple deconstruction of the CI/CD pipeline. So from a pre-commit point of view, for instance, you have things like threat modeling. You have some static analysis that you do at the front end. Once you get into committing your code, you start to do software composition analysis, which is you're looking at your open source libraries for potential flaws and vulnerabilities. You start to do unit testing of your infrastructure code and so on and so forth. At the acceptance stage, you start to do more dynamic analysis stuff. You'll do fuzzing and pen tests. And again, this is a whole talk in and of itself, but what I wanted you to take away from this is that there are security tools and security practices that are tied to each part of the CI/CD and your application and your infrastructure code delivery. And then kind of underneath it all, and Martin's going to spend a little bit of time on this, is compliance, right? So there are corporate policies, there are regulatory policies that you have to abide by, right? You have to ensure that these things are enforced. And there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of automation here to make sure that as policies are changing, regulatory policies are changing, corporate policies are changing, that these are automatically taken into a system, and so that human beings don't have to manually type in, what do I need to change? How does that look compared to what we usually do and what we've done in the past, so on and so forth. So from a marketplace perspective, these are some of the interesting companies that we're actually working with for that code integrity perspective. And so today we're going to focus a little bit more on the continuous compliance stuff. Martin's going to talk a little bit about other AWS services and how they all interact. I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but we do have continuous compliance. We have static analysis players that we work with, dynamic analysis players that we work with, the open source folks, the container vulnerability folks, and as well as the runtime application security protection. So what do we want to do overall when we're talking about DevSecOps and kind of the stuff that Martin's going to talk about is we want to empower developers to treat security defects just as they would functional defects, right? They're errors in code. So if you have a security flaw for a developer, just treat that as a functional defect, right? And it's the same thing for infrastructure code, right? You're treating your infrastructure just as you would your application code. You're looking for similar flaws in that particular code before it hits a production stage. So what do we have at the end of the day here? With DevOps, you want to take your application code, push it through your CI/CD, accelerate into production in conjunction with your infrastructure code that's then ready to support that application code, right? Through this automated testing process, through automating security to make sure security is embedded into it. And that's where security comes in, right? So you want to add the security layer onto this to make sure all three of these things are basically being executed in conjunction with each other. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Martin, and he's going to talk a little bit about how Broadridge thinks about these things.
Sweet. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. How are you? 2 quick questions to start us off, if it's all right. Want to get an idea of why everybody went into the cloud in the first place. Old reason, new reason. Anybody? Share? Agility, cost, some of those things come into play. Agility was big for us. We really wanted to be there because of what we can build and how fast we can build it, all right? The second part of that was, well, how do I keep up with what's going on? Great example today. The S3, SFTP for S3. How are you going to govern that? How are you going to control that? I'm sure there's 20 developers right now at your shop running this right now. But geez, what do I do with it? How do I bring this into how that's going to be governed and what we need to do? This is what we're talking about for us at Broadridge. And I hope this pertains to you, at least something you can take away and get some value back to bring back to your business. Our number one thing when we got into the cloud was to be able to maintain that agility. There's new services every day. We don't want to slow down any developer. But what we also don't want to do is get to the point where they're 30 weeks before production, 3 weeks before production, 3 hours before production, and somebody goes, oh, that's a bad thing. Can't do that. Happened all the time in the past. Shouldn't happen in the future because things are always flipping. We basically came up with, well, this is what we need to look at. We need to build a strong foundation, right, that's going to govern our perimeter, right, go along with our corporate controls that are within the environment, guardrail the services, and then be prepared for the worst case scenario. We're calling the worst case scenario a merger with somebody. Here's what I'm thinking. You run AWS right now. Let's say you have, what, 100 accounts? X amount of services. You've got that all framed that works very well for you. What do you do tomorrow if there's another 100 that your company just bought? Are they going to go and be part of your governance? They would be. They're going to be part of your audit. Anything else is going to go along with that. But how are you going to get them there? Is it going to be a real battle to get them there? Oh, I can't do this. I can't connect. So all the stuff that I'm going to share with you that we put together can easily, if we merge with somebody, I can integrate their services into what we do and carry it forward. The next thing, and I think is big for us specifically at Broadridge, and I would implore everybody to carry the same thing, is a partnership. That's an internal partnership. Like I myself partnered up with a person, Jason Toy, who's part of our BISG. It's really the security part of our department. Familiar with all the audits, what we need to look at, how we need to look at it, and why we need to look at it. Also, external partners. So a little bit about Broadridge, if you don't know. We're a financial solutions organization. We're not the broker-dealer, and we're not the bank. What that means is we're most likely running a system that any bank or any broker-dealer is using to go forward with. Whether it's their settlement, probably the easiest one is proxy. Everybody here owns stock? Anybody here get those mailers to vote? I'm going to say 90% of those, well, I know 90%, U.S. equities come from Broadridge. Those mailers will come from us. The reason for that is because it's not an easy business to do. The regulatory pieces that go along behind that and to keep up with it when something changed, great example, if you're familiar with the market, remember when T3 changed to T2? If you had to redo your system, that would have took half your developers off anything that they were doing and put them on somewhere else. This walks into the same thing. We strongly looked at this because of our culture and said, okay, I got to partner up with somebody who's going to know CIS, who's going to know CSA, who's going to know HIPAA, and build all of those compliance modules that we can sit there and run within our environment. The last piece, again, is keeping the baseline and know what's going on. AWS will always change. Not only will they get new services, their existing services change. The metadata changes. So you might run something today that's a compliance script, and it doesn't work tomorrow for whatever reason. We've had it where it was running for 90 days and all of a sudden just failed. All right? The metadata behind it changed. It happens. This is a very agile environment. We are used to it now. All right? And I'm suggesting to do the same because you're going to see that type of idea going forward. That before really gave us what we call our mission or our goal. The next piece was, well, let's define the criteria. Every developer is going to ask you, what can I do and what can I do? It's almost impossible to sit there and list out every AWS service and how every one of those should be configured. Again, take the ones they just came out with today. Developers already built the modules for these. They're going to be 3 different modules from 5 different people, as an example. They'll all be different. What we did was we basically blocked it together. You have a service, I need everything logged. If you can log a transaction from it, whether that's from an access log or the CloudTrail or CloudWatch, anything, please log it. All data is encrypted in transit and at rest. The next piece, strongly go against temporary credentials, only temporary credentials. Obviously, there's going to be pieces where people need to use permanent credentials, all right? Usually for elder systems that need to connect back to AWS for whatever reason, put together a policy that governs against that. And then the last piece, keep the network inside. We all know what VPCs are. We use them. We specifically say everything must run in a VPC, otherwise it's an exception. So at least we know what's governed and within the confines of what we'll call the Broadridge network itself. So you're at the point where you have the criteria, you basically have the mission. Well, let's get going on this. Our suggestion was to go out there. There are tons of things from AWS. They have webinars, they have the loft if it's in your area, there's focus groups, there's research partners. Gartner, talk to them. We've done that many times. Other people will tell you about the services, what they do, and how to do it. All right? It'll get you an idea of what you want to do and how to sit there and get going with this. The next one, I think, is the biggest one, proof of concept. Every one of the vendors that you meet in the conference, you're walking through, I can almost guarantee will allow you to run their system for 3 weeks for nothing. Probably the most beneficial thing to do because it'll give you an ability to see what you're going to see within your environment from their system. Don't worry about the sales pitch. Don't worry about everything else. Once you see it running in your environment, you'll be able to gain value quicker from it. There's nobody who didn't do this. In fact, when we specifically went and picked Dome 9, I would tell you we probably ran every other one at the same time. All right, and was able to compare one to the other. That'll also lead you into, and we'll get to it later, is creating a partnership. The reason we picked Dome 9 all right, at that time was for those main 3 reasons, right? The trusted security groups. We really use security groups as our governance, our control. Everything we want in a VPC, if we can. Obviously, S3 can't, stuff like that, but Lambda can, EC2 instances, RDS. What their trusted security groups allow you to do is if that security group is then made, it's now locked. Even the root or admin user can't change that. Dome 9 will change it back. So you always know what's going on. We'll get into more of the detail on security groups. GSL is a governance security language. that you can write modules that verify and look for certain configurations that you have. Those modules themselves get pulled into bundles, and we'll get to this, and then run in continuous compliance. Run on a daily basis, a weekly basis, whatever or however you schedule it. The last part, auto remediation, getting it to fix. So let's touch upon a little bit with the security groups, all right? Security groups can be set up, like I said, in full protection. What that does, that allows you to, the pipeline itself, not hinder it. Again, we don't want to alter or deviate from the agility of the developer. In the pipeline, they're creating a security group that they need to do for their service. It's going to come into Dome 9, it will alert. If it's, let's say somebody made a mistake and did a 000 rule, all right? You'll get an alert from that, and you'll be able to go back and either, whether it's look at an audit function, look at your documents of what it's supposed to be, and verify that and change it. But once it's there and locked in Dome 9, they can still use it. It's still part of their pipeline, but you actually have it embedded. Where in Dome 9, if somebody says, oh, I forgot this one thing, and they make a change on you, and it could be a bad change, right? Where it's going to put it back. It also gives you the ability to utilize IP list. This, I think, is great. This is like DNS for a firewall, all right? We have IP lists for internal networks, certain services, certain external services. Why that's great is because when this changed, and I go back to the merger piece, and maybe those services now get wider, or the IP list changes, or the CIDR block changes for those, all we do is edit the IP list, and those thousands of SGs that utilize that IP list will now get changed within the environment, all right? There's other pieces, we're going to get to, we're going to show you, the reporting. You got to the point where you have 10,000 something security groups. How do I really know that these were right? Did I miss something? I went on vacation. I'm the one who mainly looks at this. Where did it all of a sudden change? That'll give you the ability. The last piece I'm sharing with you, this actually took us a while to put down, a really simple statement, all right? You talk to AWS, and they're very agnostic. You do what you need to do and how you need to do it. We basically said security groups are there for allows, NACLs are there for denies. And that falls out throughout the rest of our environment. The way we rolled out security groups, in the lower level of the environments for the SDLC, we'll actually put in a handful of SGs. Here's one for the internal network. Here's one for shared services. Here's one for the audit bucket. Everything that they would need to get going. The idea then is the developers will take everything, put it all together, make their application work, and then start minimizing that down. Once they minimize it down to an improved level that passes the security audit, then it automatically again gets cloned to other environments, meaning I'll clone it to another VPC, or I'll clone it up to another AWS account, all right? And it'll push through. This way you're making it in one spot, verifying it there, and the clone service that Dome 9 actually provides you, right, can easily, you'll click a button, click on the account, click on the VPC, or many VPCs, and push that SG along. Again, the way we do it is everything's created within the sandbox. Go down to least privileges that you need to find. Combine the rules. I'm going to make a mention, and I have it there, is remember the limits on AWS, right? 5 by 50, 2 by 125. You only have 250 rules. So don't have somebody just go wild right off the bat, and they're going to realize something's going to break. So you got to the point where, okay, the security groups are there and running. We were saying, well, how do I sit there and verify what's in play? How do I know all these things are open? Dome 9 provides you with 3. One of them are the policy reports. You can actually pull up these reports and search for a specific port, protocol, whatever you might need within the services that you have everything connected up to AWS. So you'll see, let's say somebody made a mistake, or you want to look for 000 rules by mistake. Easily to find them here. This can also bring you right into the VPC flow logs if you actually want to see something in real time. The next way to do it is with a tool they have, Clarity. Clarity shows you what's possible. This is saying that this SG has the ability to get to that SG. All right, all the way throughout the network, and then classifies where this is, internet, DMZ, internal. And you're looking at the entire map, that's really one VPC in one account. The last piece, this is real. These are actual services, whether that's a Lambda function, whether that's a bucket, whether that's an EC2 instance, connecting to something else. This is real-time traffic of what is going on with the environment. And you'll see where it's getting to. Again, you can utilize that to click on something and be able to go all the way through and get to what's in the network. And then again, this will jump you to the VPC flow logs. That covers the network. So we think we have this under control. At least it's something. It gets us going. The next piece, again, the governance-specific language, we're going to just keep calling it GSL. It's their short name for it. This is a way to write specific rules. The benefit of us going with a vendor is we're utilizing their research, and what I find even better is their maintenance. When those rules change, and they do, here's a great one. I'm going to be poking Dome 9 tomorrow for, where's the new one for FX? That new file system they just came out with Windows? I don't have time to sit there and write that, neither do 20 other people that are working at back at Broadridge. I'm sure your organization is going to be the same. But I don't want to let it go because I can make you a bet someone's running it right now in Sandbox, right? They're going to be the ones coming up, okay, we need these rules, right? You submit an enhancement request back to Dome 9. They'll come up with, okay, you want it for, in transit, and how do I do this? Even when EFS was first out there. Remember when EFS was out there and you can only do encryption, I think, at rest, but they didn't have encryption at transit? That came out like 8 months ago. Perfect example, right? Something like that. Not only was the service not there to be able to do it, but you didn't even know it was possible or not to do it. That's what a provider you're going along with. Let me take a second and share a little bit about providers or people. This is everything. This is not only AWS, but someone else that you're working with in AWS. You have to become a partner with them. You're going to have to share, just like we do with AWS, go back to them and say, yeah, listen, I'd really like to see this. It's a reason they're making a service. I know enough about AWS. They're not doing it in a vacuum. The things they come out with are because so many people requested this type of service. That's why they're doing that. All right? This is another example. I'm going to implore you to do the same thing if you pick a partner, to do just that. Spend a lot of time with them. Work with them going, this is what I want to see. This is what I need to see and how to see that. Back to the GSL. You'll see there's ability to actually create rules. So there's a canned rules, right, that they give you. There's also rules that they might not have. Specifically for us, it's everything with an IAM. We have a list of roughly 35, I think, GSL rules for just IAM, right? Nothing but simple things, you would think, right? I want to see who has the allow star policy. And it really better only be admin. And we actually have a GSL. Funny, that's the one I put there. Huh, good. That's actually the one I have, all right? To basically say, oh, look, I want to know who's got the star.star, and you ignore the admin access and the BR Cloud admin. This happens a lot because developers come out and go, all right, I got to make something real fast. Let me give the instance profile policy star so I can need to do what I need to do real quick. Bang, you come up with, well, that's not good, right? Where it helps us is that we'll get to an audit, and they won't be wondering what went wrong. We'll hit them right off the bat. We'll get to that when we start seeing on continuous compliance. Dome 9 provides over 1,000 GSL rules. So probably services you're not even running, they're ready for. All right? This gives you a great kickstart. If you took Dome 9, put it in your shop today, you can basically run it against what's there and go, okay, well, let me see. This works for us. We should do this. We shouldn't do this. Or you should ignore that. We specifically do just that. On the bundle, you'll actually create those GSLs. You'll create your own bundle, which is basically a group of GSL rules. We do that with all theirs. We don't run any of their bundles. We run our own because we actually edit those. The one you see on the screen actually gives you an exception. So it's basically that is their GSL, but we have the exception in there for the Aquapoc, right? It's a server that we want to run because it runs outside an ECS instance. Again, they'll be the ones doing the updates. They'll be the ones providing. And you'll actually look and see when the updates are out there. They'll tell you, oh, we updated these EFS modules. We updated this by that rule ID at the bottom. If you need to, again, create your own rules, easy enough. Let's say you don't know the GSL. I didn't know it. A lot of people don't know it at Broadridge right at the beginning. There's a playground on the top there. You click the buttons. You basically pick the service. I should do this. I shouldn't do this. It's this old. It's not that old. And you'll have a way to actually find what you need to look for. Testing, simple. It's read-only. You can't break anything. Run it, click the button, verify what you need to see or not need to see, and actually execute the test. And that one actually passed, right? But that's a perfect example. But it gives you the ability to keep creating as it goes along, a new system, a new service that's out there. Even if Dome 9 doesn't have it, you can write it. So you're at the point now where you have GSL rules, you have these bundles. Bundles are now what you run, and what they have is continuous compliance. Continuous compliance is something that runs automatically. It'll basically take a bundle and run it when you need to run it, whether that's immediate, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever comes up in play. So we have different environments that do different things. Our SDLC compared to our production, in other words, like our development, isn't as governed as the production is, right, to a degree. We'll have the weekly reports for, let's say, inspector. We actually have, I think, 7 GSLs for inspector runs. There's no point in running those every day. The inspector scans only run on a weekly basis, all right? But what the continuous compliance does, it allows you to run all those bundles on your schedule to go forward with. Now, where this comes into key is majority of ours are daily. We're not going to be at the point where maybe it was like before, where you're finding out something's wrong well into the production run or right before it goes into production. We find everything daily. And the reason we find it daily is probably like most of you. The developers will tell us, oh, we're running this, oh, it's got to go into production. We're able to easily tell them, oh, you just lit this up. Hold on a second. Can you go back? Here's a different module. Or can you configure it this way? We know they only run it for less than 24 hours. All right? So when by the time they get to production, by the time they get to integration, they're about as hardened as you would, that we can pass an audit tomorrow for what's in the environment. And we can tell you when it came up and where it came up. That's really the opportunity I see on continuous compliance, is that you're keeping up with the environment. You're not slowing development down. Biggest thing is you're letting them experiment. Go back to the agility of why we all got into the cloud. You want to be able to let everybody run, let experiments go, right? But catch, hey, listen, can you do the configuration a different way? We don't want this to be wide open. Don't expect developers going to know about network or encryption or KMS, right? But you'll be able to see, oh, you didn't encrypt this volume. Can you not do that? Can we switch it over to this way? Oh, by the way, here's how you actually create a Dynamo database that's encrypted. We do it all the time. Everything that we have from Dome 9 goes to SNS and SQS. SNS for our email, because we like to look at it. SQS goes back to our SIM, specifically Splunk. Everything gets logged. So all these events that always happen are always within Splunk and within the SIM. This is a good example, and this basically walks you through the whole piece. There's 2 rules there. They're specifically NACL rules. So what we had is we have an SFTP site that's out there. Like everybody else, SFTP is going to be open to 0000, right? I don't know who's coming in tomorrow. But we found those 2 IP addresses are Tors. I want to be able to block them. So we threw those into the NACL list. I want to make sure somebody doesn't remove that NACL. So what we did was we wrote a GSL that specifically says, is that NACL sitting in that role on that VPC? And that gets checked on a real-time basis. If that ever gets pulled, we'll get the message in the SIM, and we'll actually get the message in email and know enough what needs to get done to put it back. So it's the same way security is done within the security groups for Dome 9. We actually made it up through the NACLs. The reporting, like I said, we do these daily. Most of the reports that come out daily. We're looking at these all the time. What we want is 100% compliance. If we don't see 100% compliance, people will actually go to the service, look at the creator of the service, and invest and find out who they are, message them, can we redo the service, can we redo the configuration this way? So there's a point on this, and we'll jump a little bit to the end where they're talking about auto remediation. We actually got into a battle at one point. We were actually gung-ho on this, and we're going to auto-fix everything. S3 buckets, blah, blah. I honestly can't, well, there were times we broke stuff. There were times we actually put KMS on an S3 bucket, and because the data was already encrypted, it needed AES 256. Bad, not big deal, but bad. All right. Here's the funny one. We were actually doing something where we fixed it, and the developer ran the build again and put it back, and then we fixed it. Did it again. This went on for a month until somebody looked at the logs to find out, oh, maybe you should tell the developer that's not the way to do it. All right. So it's a little bit of, but there's opportunities, don't get me wrong. And we talk a little bit about it later. That's where I'm coming back to, expect deviations with the environment. There's always going to be stuff. Like I said, we always want 100% reports. We rarely see a day where it's always 100% reports. Honestly, even on Saturday after we fixed it, the Sunday report will have something wrong because the developer worked over the weekend. or something. Not a big deal. But that gives you the opportunity of, okay, you got to this point, really look at the balance of educate and remediate. What do you want to teach the developers? What do you want to show them the right way to do it? Or do you just want to be able to fix what's there? There's other services too. You're at the point now where, okay, you think you have the guardrails in, you think you have the perimeter controlled. It's not the last step. These are services, we won't talk a lot about these, all right? But you really want to look at the traffic. Just because you're locked down doesn't mean DDoS can't hit you. It can, it's a legal piece of traffic, right? Brute force attacks, same thing, if it was open. Yeah, it could be something malicious, it could be somebody who would have forgot the password, but still traffic, you want to be able to look at traffic. Guard duty, perfect recommendation for doing that. We've picked up a lot of misconfiguration. I'm not talking about malicious events, just misconfiguration on guard duty alone. Again, I'm bringing up SNS and SQS because that's where the messages are going to either email or SIM. Macy, another one. Perfect tool out there for looking at objects within buckets. Right? A lot of the stuff look at the bucket, but did you know that you can actually have a bucket that's not public, but an object that is within that public? I didn't know until Macy kept squirting out the alert going, why is that person's backup given to everybody? Right? That's really why we have the tool. Certainly to do CloudTrail analysis, but I'm just saying, the big thing I get to take away from the AWS tools, if you look at them, they're not very costly. Let me get to one and I'll continue that thought. Firewall Manager, another great one. I would suggest, right, it works very well for us, probably will work well for you. Put the master for Firewall Manager where you put the guard duty master. This way the same group that can see those messages can create the WAS. They're only going into one account and funnel it there. We did just that. And you'll see that we have the CloudWatch event that gets alerted anything that gets done with WAF. WAF isn't something we change often. Right? It's really, once it's put out there, it's static, and we actually assign services to it through tags. And that's what's given in the rule for the Firewall Manager. So nothing really should happen. We're alerting on anything, any service from AWS that comes with WAF. Advanced Shield, this was the one I want to touch on. So a lot of people, again, the services within AWS really don't cost that much. People think Advanced Shield is tremendous at $3,000, what is it, a month? For the service. And for in AWS world, that really is, if you look at it. Nothing's that expensive. I mean, guard duty, I think, costs us $10 a month per account. Next to nothing, right? So $3,000 is, oh wait, maybe I didn't read the last line either until afterwards. It's $3,000 for your entire org. So if you light it up for one account, you might as well light them up from all. What's great about Advanced Shield is you actually have the DRT service, right? The denial services from AWS help you when there's an issue. Write a WAF rule. If you give them access to your VPC flow logs, which is easy now, because there's that radio button that you just click and dump them into a bucket, and we actually put it to an aggregate bucket, so it's in one account that's away from everybody. Those are all my VPC flow logs. The DRT can help you with an issue, can find it, and look at the logs that are going on. A great service from AWS itself. So this goes back to the piece where I was sharing before. You want to educate or remediate. You really have to look at what's best. Some of the case scenarios, let's talk about this. Traffic, guard duty. Guard duty actually showed us a configuration error. We received a brute force attack, and a lot of them in a very short period of time, from a registered IP address. Honestly, we freaked at one point. What am I doing? How am I going to do this? Let me find out what this is. Long story short, somebody configured the keep alive for an ALB to the console port. So to the service, it looked like someone was trying to log in, not just send, are you there? Right? Like you would do for a web server. This looked like somebody was trying to log in all the time. It took a little bit, not a big deal. Called up AWS, got on the support line, went through it. Within 5 minutes, oh no, it's your ALB. And now we go back to it, which is great because this we found out was rolled out to a number of configurations. That's a great example of looking at live traffic. Don't think your configuration is great, and it probably is. You need to know or need to see what's going on with the environment. Second one, probably easy, right? Public buckets. Now it's a little bit simpler, right? Because AWS actually came out with the service that you can exclude all public buckets. But as an example, public bucket. Somebody makes that, we'll see an alert immediately, be able to change that bucket, however they did it, through the bucket policy, through the ACL, and be able to remediate the issue, let the developer know, let's not do that, or you should or shouldn't do this. When you get to the point, okay, we want to fix, this is where education comes in. Need to make the decision of what works best for the organization. Just like anything else in AWS, it's really a try, fail, and see what works best for your organization. We did just that. We actually went through, like I said, built things, found out we fixed them too much. Developers were coming back to us, falling over, and we were able to drive this through. I'm going to show you some examples that actually have the auto remediation. But where I really want to talk here is CloudBots from Dome 9. The opportunity with CloudBots in this slide is, for me, twofold. One is, for your ability to find what you want to remediate, it's done by GSL. I'm going to show you an example of something that we actually had before, that we ran all the time before CloudBots even existed. So you're already familiar with the GSL language. You wrote a bunch of scripts for pieces that you look for. Fantastic. That's half the drive. The next piece is basically add the CloudBot for the auto remediation. Where I like this is this fits back within our criteria from before. A lot of the auto remediation that's out there is looking at Lambda in every account. Have fun trying to maintain that, because we had developers that do CloudFormation, we had developers that do Terraform. The stuff's all over the place, right? This gives you the ability to have one spot, just like within Dome 9, for all of your remediation tasks. Dome 9 actually allow you to write your own Python. They'll work with you, they'll put it in their CloudFormation to be able to rebuild the CloudBot. The Lambda runs in one account and uses cross-account access to get to the other services. Back to the temporary credentials that we mentioned in the criteria. Fits all the security guidelines. And that one account, specifically for us, is an audit account. We have an account on the side that is nothing but us 7 admins are in there. No one else. So our aggregate buckets go there for your VPC flow logs, for your CloudTrail, for your CloudWatch, for your config. Something someone else can't get to. That's where this Lambda is running. And then does cross-account, and as usual, SNS, SQS out to be able to get the information. We start talking about these are some of the things we did. Great example. This came from a rule that Dome 9 basically shared with us from the CSA. You don't keep unused security groups within your environment. Won't pass an audit, need to get them out. We were running that GSL for a year plus before the Autobot came out. And we actually have somebody go through and clean them up. Great example. All we now did was add that bottom piece, SG delete, onto the same GSL that we already had. No harm, no foul was simple to do, and now it's actually going through and immediately cleaning up security groups that are unused, specifically for this that start with Launch Wizard. All right. Another one that we have, the auto remediation in bucket. This is the default one. This was another one once the CloudBot came out. Okay, let me try this, right? Maybe something you might think, well, the really developers should do this, but this isn't that detrimental. It doesn't change that much. It doesn't hurt their configuration if we do put it in play. But this is perfect. There's the GSL rule, and what's great about that goes back to the playground. Let's say you were making that rule. You don't have to do the Autobot. You don't have to do the fix right off the bat. You can run that rule for a week, a month, a day, whatever you feel comfortable with to know that what you're looking for is correct. And then the second part, I'll get to this in the next one, actually goes through and will execute what needs to be done. This one was good. This is for us. These are all of our chef servers. So when people build things within Broadridge, basically they'll bring up the CI/CD pipeline to do what they need to do, and then terminate it. We hope terminate it. We do notice that they don't terminate it some of the times. Not a big deal. I don't think that's so bad. We'll fix it for you. We basically say if you actually name that instance that name and it's 12 hours old, we're going to terminate it on you. These are perfect things. The next one, probably the best of all. This is where I think auto remediation comes into play, going backwards. We were not a system manager shop at the beginning of our AWS journey. We were well into it. We're talking about tons of accounts, thousands of instances and go, oh, you know what? System Manager gives you the ability to do X, Y, and Z. Ooh, we really should do that. I'm not going to tell every developer, hey, you guys got about 1,000 plus instances. Could you go back and fix this stuff for us? Because for everybody, right, System Manager, you need the instance profile, you need a certain policy in there, you need to have the API access in there, and then you need to have the agent. Let's just talk about what's in the system policy, because that's what this is dealing with. What we did was we basically went to the CI/CD meetings and go, hey, listen, going forward, you need to have these 3 things in. Okay, terrific. Going backwards, we'll fix everything for you. That's where order remediation was great. Because now I have all these things, and I'm sure this is going to be the only time this is going to happen. There's going to be something new from AWS that we're going to have to backfill all the way through. That's exactly what this did. What's even better is a person at Broadridge, Saravanan, actually wrote the Python for this. So the GSL is fairly simple, right? 2 things. I want to know if the instance has an instance profile. If it does, I need to add a policy. If it doesn't, I'm just going to add an instance profile that has that policy. So 2 different GSLs, 2 different things we're looking for, right? That's easy to write. That's easy to test. The Python code that runs, that you'll see after the auto, we wrote at Broadridge. We then worked with Dome 9, and they actually had that, where if you're a Dome 9 customer, you can actually utilize this Python code. And that Python code, when you download the actual CloudFormation itself for the Autobot, is there. You can look at it, clear text. If that gives you an idea to create something else or do something else, use it. To me, the greatest thing about open systems and everything else, we're all sharing. Honestly, there's nothing proprietary anywhere because in 3 months, this is all going to change, right? With the rate of change with AWS and everything else. So if we can all help each other to keep up with it, this is perfect. But that's exactly what I think the best thing is for order remediation, is to fix what's existing and not slow down the path of development. The last part is, okay, you're running all these things. How do you know you're running all these things? 2 pieces for us. One is, the bottom one, there's logs. As I share, we log everything. That's a great example. It'll tell you all the events. On top of it, though, every GSL that we run within the auto remediation, we actually have as a daily rule. So I should see that as 100%, or then I know the auto remediation itself is failing. So an easy way to do a systems check within the environment. I mentioned at the beginning about access. Just real quick for Broadridge, role-based. We're federated. We come in through our AD. They're MFA, everybody's temporary credentials. Even those guys are yelling you clips and I need keys, we figured out a way. Everybody does it through temporary credentials. So we're not locked on. Everybody does it with MFA. What's great about that is it goes along with our termination policy. So if someone leaves and you don't know we're 10,000 something people, I'm not going to know all this stuff. This is actually removing the user from the environment without us even having to worry about it. Then the last piece is cover anything with the GSL rules to make the exceptions. The last part, I think the biggest one, I'm going to step to the bottom, keeping current. We're all here. We've all been to an event, or this is the first one. You'll notice all the new announcements. Keeping up with a partner and keeping up with AWS is important. The rate of change is huge of what's going on, all right? I'm going to leap off this for a second and share with you. There's a number of things. This presentation is honestly no more than 6 weeks old, maybe a month. There's already things in here that I wouldn't say are old, but have either happened or not. First one for us, we actually had that merger. We now have a merger where someone else has AWS. And we're able to pull them in, make them part of our org, right, govern all the information that they have, and put them into all of our CloudBot formations. So going forward, they can immediately pass an audit that we need to go into, all right? The second one was we talked about editing the GSL rules for exceptions, taking Dome 9s. They actually came out with, I think it's in beta though, what they call excludes. Where that is good is now you can run Dome 9's bundles themselves. So that 1,000, and they do have, their best practice bundles over 1,000 rules. You can run that and then build your own exclusions out of that, not make a copy of it. Where that's important is where I was sharing you about the updates. We used to have to go through and go, okay, I changed this, oh, they updated that. And there was a reconciliation of when something new came out and when the update had to happen on our side. Or if something didn't work and we go back to them. The exclusions give you the ability to do this. What that's sharing with, well, I'm hoping to share with you, is the rate of change, not only within Dome 9, within AWS, and that's not going to change, especially with after this morning's keynote. You can recognize the competition, and that's only going to drive this even further and faster. All right? I would again go back to it, going back with everybody else and keeping up with what's going on. That concludes everything. If anybody has any questions, we're available outside afterwards. I would please, if anybody has the opportunity, please take the opportunity to fill out surveys and submit them. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your time in Vegas.